This is Sean with Project Education. Here's another talk with counselors and experts in how to become tougher through trauma. Hey, I'm Sean. I'm with Natalie. Hey, Natalie.
Hi.
You want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you work, what you do.
Sure. I'm Natalie Talpush. So this is my second year at CCA. I work for the Learning Enrichment Lab, which is under our ESC umbrella. So I am a teacher right now, and I have small classes. And a lot of these kids maybe have learning disabilities or processing issues. So this lab is really designed to help them process better, and just kind of it's remedial. It helps get them back on pace. I love the class, but my background is mental health. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in dialysis for 10 years, but I've been with Sheridan House going on 5 years. So I am a part-time counselor with them as well. So I still do that work, but very part-time.
Okay.
So for me, 3 to 5 clients a week is kind of where I'm at in that.
Okay. Is it helpful to do it now on video so you don't have to commute?
Yes. I mean, I actually prefer the in-person,
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like the in-person. And I think that's so much part of our training is you're reading body language and, facial expressions. And there is a little bit of that lost through the computer, but I am happy that we can still see our clients and see our students this way. So happy for the technology.
Does it limit your effectiveness? Do you feel like you're missing moments that you would have normally caught?
That's a great question. I do think so. I think that there is a moment there is a limitation, for the clients I've had maybe for a very long time that I know very well. I have one young man, he just started college. I've been seeing him for 3 years. And so we met this way because he had to come home. And he was, of course, really upset to come home. And I know him. So because I know him, I feel like it was a little bit easier to pick up on things. But if he would have been new to me, I might have lost something in the translation. So for sure.
Makes sense. Okay. And for you, what's the biggest adjustment about quarantine? Like whether it's personal or through your employment, what's been the biggest challenge?
Sure. I think that for our families, for our students, and for me personally, if you have any underlying mental health, this can really exacerbate it. There's so much fear, unknowns, the anxiety about this virus, about COVID. We're hearing mixed messages from different sources. Our students, I don't know how much they're hearing, how much are their parents sharing with them. So they might have misunderstandings about what it is. And that will breed anxiety. And it'll also make any underlying mental illness worse. It'll bring to light maybe things that have been there and haven't been addressed yet.
Got it. Okay. And with some of your clients, are you seeing that stuff surfacing and you're having to address it?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So they might have gotten to a place where they're doing really well. And now some of their coping skills that they had, like maybe talking with a friend or meeting with a friend or going to the gym, they can't do those things anymore. And now they're kind of limited in where they can do those things. And that can create kind of a little bit of a setback.
Sure.
So we might have gotten far and now they've kind of come back, and then also I've been reading a lot about, just the domestic violence and the child abuse that can happen now. These kids are home with their abusers. The reporting's gone down. So that in my heart as a clinician, that's very troubling and makes me sad. I want to just help and we feel limited in what we can do.
Yeah, that's true. And is this the kind of situation like retraumatizing can happen too, where you can, just because of the mass crisis and the unknown, do you see people actually getting, not even just regressing, but it can actually just sort of bring the whole thing back?
Absolutely. So we're going to see PTSD or post-traumatic stress from this. We're going to have patients that it's going to bring back things to the light, and it's also going to kind of create new traumas. So I think there'll be a big wave of mental health, like a crisis kind of after this too, because what happens a lot of times we go into this survival brain. And so we're literally just going through the motions and we might feel numb or just kind of tired and going through it. But when this is all lifted is when we're really going to see people kind of trying to process what happened and it'll bring a resurfacing.
Wow.
So that's kind of something to really keep in the forefront, of our minds of how is this shaping, what's going to come.
Right. I know that's true of depression too. You would assume that at the lowest part of depression is where the highest rate of suicide happens. But I guess the information out there is that actually as somebody's on their way, maybe in a slightly better place than their lowest low, that they have the energy to actually make a decision like suicide. So I guess you're saying the same thing is true with this trauma. People, once they're maybe things normalize slightly, that's when they'll start feeling it.
Correct. Yeah. Because we're kind of going, like, our brain shuts off that piece in order for us to survive. So we go into all the motions, we're doing what we need to do. But then we're going to see that resurfacing. And that was a great example with depression and possibly suicide.
Wow. And what are some techniques for anybody that, like a student or just somebody trying to work or somebody who's out of work? Like what are some techniques to avoid the re-traumatization? Because like even folks who maybe have never been diagnosed as having suffered a childhood trauma, I know that it's way more common for us to have something than it is uncommon to have something. And so we want to be braced for crisis. Like what are some techniques or some basic things someone can do to?
Sure. And that's a great question. And one of the things that I think counseling helps people with is coping skills and coping mechanisms. Now, you don't need to go to a counselor to do some of these things. And, we may be limited in our means of, financial or, being able to get there. So deep breathing, there's a lot of YouTube videos that kind of can show someone how to breathe deeply. When we're in a state of anxiety or panic, we start to not breathe deep enough to calm down that parasympathetic system and just bring it down so we can process better. Exercise. So even if we can't go to a gym, you can get outside and take a walk, a bike ride, jumps, anything, anything that's moving your body, because that moves the adrenaline, and you want to burn adrenaline because anxiety starts to spill adrenaline and you want to burn it up because that helps kind of calm it down. Of course, we can still talk to our friends. And as Christians, we have the greatest source, which is the Word of God. And I was thinking about this because I go, the Lord always wants us to change our mindset. We are not of this world, and we're always changing the way we as believers think. And, I was thinking of James 1:2, and it's like, consider all trials joy, because now we're really developing patience, we're developing grit. And this is where, the rubber meets the road. We're learning how to process and go through and develop better mental health.
Wow. Yeah. Some of the phrasing I've been using is we're getting tougher through the trauma, right? Absolutely. And so there's actually post-traumatic growth, right? It's the opportunity to develop something you almost can't without the trauma to some degree.
And that mindset I love, because that's something our kids can feel like, hey, I can overcome this. And, instead of feeling defeated by this enemy, we can feel empowered that God's going to use this and that we can overcome it. Definitely so important. Just like our immune systems, if you think about, babies get sick more often because our immune systems aren't developed. So as we get pathogens and we develop a stronger immune system, our mental health is the same way. When we go through trials, we develop a stronger mental health, and we just put those coping skills in place for a person to grow from that and see it in a different light. We use the term cognitive distortion. So a lot of times we tell ourselves things that are not helpful, right? So, we might say, let's say we're worried about a test, students really worried about a test, and they can just over and over, they're telling themselves, I'm not prepared. And that mantra is really dangerous and damaging. So a counselor kind of comes in and challenges that a little bit. Where did you think that you got that idea? And that's where we challenge that mindset. And that's why the Word of God is so important, because He reminds us of all those things in His Word.
Wow. Yeah. And I sort of imagine that not every person who views this will have a foundation in a faith, but I'm seeing here how like even someone who doesn't necessarily have that would see the value in it and to go, hey, having some set of truths to challenge some bad thinking that like, because you're going to have to come up with truth somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. And where does our truth come from? And where did we develop these maybe thinking, these mindset about ourselves, or these notions about ourselves, that we can't do something, or that we feel sad. But I do want to point out that, one thing that sometimes we think anxiety or depression is someone's fault. It's a myth, or that we're doing something wrong. There's also just anxiety and depression, and it's there, just like, diabetes would be there, or strep throat would be there. And we just have to manage it in many different ways. And it's a multifaceted problem that we're coming at it from different angles.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean you're not praying enough or, spiritual enough. It is what it is.
Right. Okay. I was, a couple of different social workers in these conversations have said that it's like, sometimes we expect to be beyond anxiety for whatever reason. And, right. But I mean, anxiety is part of the human experience.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we have to also kind of be okay with it. Like, it's there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It could be a motivating thing for us to make some changes in our life. That could be a good thing, or, maybe just an acknowledgement of our feelings, and that we're human and we're allowed to feel, and especially with COVID, students are going to feel lots of feelings, so even boredom could be a symptom of just, this is our new life and we're bored with this life and I want to go out and see my friends and do something. That's a normal feeling, and that's okay.
That's really good. So I know for me, the quarantine sort of shown me how poorly I do without my former routines. I guess all those years of building into just a rhythm with working in the same place for 10 years, and those just disappearing overnight. I mean, it really messed with me. My anxiety was like up to here, I could feel it in my body. And so some of the things I've been able to do are some of what you mentioned already, just sort of letting the adrenaline burn off through some exercise, definitely trying to make sure I'm having connections despite the lack of proximity, just, doing the computer talk. And so this really helped me. I'm just curious, have you been affected by this, and maybe what things have you implemented?
That's a good question. Yes, I have. And I'm a very social person. So I desperately miss my students. I miss seeing their faces and giving them a high five. It's not the same through the computer. But I have made more intentionality of connecting maybe with people I don't talk to on a regular basis that are friends of mine that live out of state. Now that we're all kind of quarantined, I'm like, what a great opportunity. And again, seeing it in a different light to connect with them. So once a week, I'm connecting with college friends that live, out of state, or I'm talking to my brothers maybe more frequently, and their wives and their children. Through technology, we use Google Duo because that's what they have. And it's just a different way to connect. I am walking more outside. We're taking family bike rides, which is so cool. My daughters are loving it. My little one got a bigger bike, and she's all excited to learn to, no training wheels. So she's getting there. So, we're making the best of it.
That's so cool. The bike is the common denominator. I've done about 5 of these, and every counselor has bought a bike, picked out their bike. It's always about the bike.
That's
so I think we found the cure. We just have to let people know.
Perfect.
There it is. Bike. That's the bike. Oh, wow. So, okay, good. What about, do you think or have any concerns about less things being reported maybe to you because of this quarantine? That being obviously there's always technology and phone calls available, but do you think less people are reaching out to their support systems?
I would agree. Yes, I do think that. I think that because we're in that survival brain, it also could feel like one more thing to do. It could feel like, now I have all my schoolwork to do. I have all these demands, siblings running around, parents that seem stressed, and now I have to reach out to my counselor, and then I have to do another Zoom call or another meeting. So it could feel more like a burden than a helpful thing. So I do think there will be, some people that don't reach out when they need the help. And that's concerning too. And, also, a student that is having dark thoughts or, of self-harm or something like that, they may not want to talk because they're afraid their parents are in the next room, their siblings are in the next room. So that does concern me. And I want students to know that just because we're on quarantine, mental health issues don't stop, and we professionals don't stop treating them. Right. So they can still reach out.
It's really good. And I know you have a set of resources. With your permission, I'd love to put them in the notes of the video. You have any other top thoughts as far as mental health and hygiene goes? Just one thing that we can all do?
hygiene.
Mental hygiene. Yeah. I don't know
I
if
like
that's the
that. I
wrong
like
word to
that.
use it.
No, I love it. So you mentioned the word post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that we talked about, grit and just developing the sense of resistance. So just for all of us to practice self-care and talk to ourselves like we would a 5-year-old. That's another technique we say. We say, what would you tell a 5-year-old if they were feeling afraid? And you wouldn't put them down. So why do we talk to ourselves that way? We would be gentle with ourselves and practice this idea of like, you know what? I'm feeling very overwhelmed right now. Maybe I need to put down the work I'm doing and go for a walk or make a cup of tea or read a book or do something a little different just to break it up. And so that's practicing that mental health hygiene and really just taking a step back and allowing yourself to feel what you feel in that moment and just getting yourself being able to regroup. So I think it's like a 2-part process. You want to be able to feel, but we also want someone to develop the skills to then pull back, let them have those moments, and then pull back and keep going. So it's like a double process here. And both of those things are really important.
Wow, that's good. And anyone can implement that, I would think. It seems pretty straightforward.
I hope so. And I, again, you reach out to your faith community, here at Calvary Chapel, we have so many resources and people to talk to, your faith, whether you're friends and family, but there is always someone there willing to listen. And that's a big part of it too, is that listening piece and knowing that someone cares.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, this was very helpful. I appreciate your time and your expertise. I think we should have another conversation like this.
Definitely. I'd be happy to anytime.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Especially as the quarantine goes on, I'll be needing a checkup. Right now.
Okay. Anytime.
Free counseling. So this is great. All right.
Anytime.
Awesome. Well, as far as this recording goes, then I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Natalie.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.